The fluorescent lights above flickered uncertainly, casting long shadows among the towering piles of socks that crowded the storage room like forgotten relics of 1,000 lost worlds. Elliot shifted uneasily on his feet, the faint scent of aging cotton and stale paper filling the cramped space. Across from him, Harold sat hunched over a battered notebook, his wild grey hair a chaotic halo illuminated by the pale light. His fingers trembled slightly as he traced the faded ink of diagrams and hastily scrawled notes. "You want to know the truth, Elliot," Harold began, voice low and ragged. "The full story behind these portals and why I fell from grace. It's not a tale for the faint-hearted." He paused, eyes glinting with a mixture of regret and determination. "But if anyone can make it right, it's you." Elliot leaned in closer, the odd sock in his pocket twitching faintly as if eager to hear the confession. Mina stood just outside the doorway, arms crossed, her usual pragmatic expression softened by the weight of the moment. The quiet hum of the bureau's fluorescent lights seemed to fade, leaving only the urgency of Harold's words. "Years ago," Harold continued, "I was part of a research team investigating the potential of lost socks as dimensional gateways. Our aim was noble: to understand, to explore, perhaps even to harness these portals for the greater good. But ambition, as it often does, outpaced caution." He flipped the notebook open, revealing pages filled with meticulous notes and sketches of sock patterns, energy readings, and field reports. "We believed we could control the portals, stabilize them, but one experiment went catastrophically wrong. A sock we dubbed the Crimson Thread. It opened a rift to unstable, spilling chaotic energies into our world. It was a disaster. Lives were endangered, realities threatened." Mina's lips tightened. "That's why you were demoted, reduced to filing socks for the bureau." Her voice was sharp but carried a trace of sympathy. Harold nodded. "Exactly. I carried the blame. But the truth is, the portals are far more unpredictable than we imagined. The bureau tried to cover it up, bury that failure deep beneath endless paperwork and silence. But the rogue faction, they don't care about consequences. They want to weaponize these portals, to bend realities to bureaucratic will." Elliot felt the odd sock in his pocket pulse, a faint warmth spreading through his fingers. "What can we do? How do we stop them?" From beneath the cluttered desk, Harold produced a small, intricately embroidered sock. It shimmered faintly, the fabric alive with a subtle, otherworldly glow. "This," he said reverently, "is a key. Not just a portal, but a delicate balance of energies. Navigating these dimensions requires precision and respect. If we understand the patterns, the rules, maybe we can outmaneuver the faction's reckless plans." Elliot reached out, fingers brushing the sock's strange surface. A surge of possibilities flashed before his eyes, worlds of whimsy and chaos, bureaucratic absurdities heightened to cosmic scales, and the fragile thread holding it all together. The responsibility was enormous. "You're not alone," Harold said, voice steadying. "Mina's by your side, and I'll guide you as best I can. But you're the one who's going to lead this charge." Mina stepped fully into the room, placing a reassuring hand on Elliot's shoulder. "We've seen too much to turn back now. Let's get to work." The trio gathered around the cluttered desk, poring over Harold's notes and diagrams, the weight of history and hope intertwined in the faded pages, as the office noises of distant typing and rustling papers faded into a determined silence. Elliot's heart quickened with resolve. The game had changed, the stakes higher than ever. Outside the storage room, the corridors of the bureau hummed with indifferent bureaucracy, unaware that within these walls, a fragile alliance was forging a new path, one that might just save their reality from unraveling. As the chapter closed, Elliot glanced once more at the glowing sock in his hand, the pulse steady and sure. The journey from intern to savior was only beginning, and the absurd dance of socks and dimensions awaited its next act. The dim light of the bureau's endless corridors flickered uncertainly as Elliot followed Mr. Tiddles, the office cat who had taken an uncharacteristically insistent interest in his recent escapades. The tabby's tail flicked with purpose, weaving through towering, labyrinthine filing cabinets that seemed to stretch endlessly upwards, their metal faces cold and indifferent in the fluorescent glow. The hum of the overhead lights mingled with the soft padding of paws on the linoleum floor, a soundtrack that was at once mundane and oddly comforting. Elliot was no stranger to the absurdity of his workplace, but this nocturnal expedition felt different. The cat's eyes glinted like tiny orbs of conspiracy, and though Elliot didn't understand the feline's motives, he trusted Mr. Tiddles more than most of his human colleagues. "All right, lead the way," he whispered, as if the filing cabinets themselves might eavesdrop. The passageways between cabinets narrowed until Elliot had to turn sideways, his ink-stained fingers brushing against the dusty metal. The stale scent of forgotten paperwork filled the air, punctuated by the occasional squeak of a filing drawer being tugged open or shut somewhere in the distance. Mr. Tiddles paused, his whiskers twitching, before darting towards a particular cabinet that looked more neglected than the rest, its surface mottled with scratches and smudges. Elliot crouched and pulled open the drawer. A cloud of dust rose, shimmering in the pale light. Inside lay a jumble of yellowed dossiers, faded memos, and cryptic notes scrawled in various handwritings, an archive of secrets lost to time and bureaucracy. His heart quickened. Could this be the key to understanding the rogue faction that Harold had warned him about? Carefully, Elliot sifted through the papers, every rustle echoing in the quiet corridor. A slip of parchment caught his Aja report detailing unauthorized experiments with sock portals, accompanied by a list of names that matched the senior clerks rumored to be involved in the conspiracy. The plans were chilling in their ambition, weaponizing the portals to manipulate alternate realities for power and control. A sudden creak of footsteps sent a jolt through Elliot's spine. He glanced up to find Mina approaching, coffee mug in hand, her pragmatic face etched with concern. "You really think there's something here?" she whispered, glancing nervously around. "Mr. Tiddles led me here," Elliot said, holding up the document. "And it's worse than we feared." Mina's skepticism cracked just enough to let a flicker of belief slip through. Together, they gathered the folders, their whispers low and urgent as they retreated to a shadowed alcove behind a filing cabinet. The scent of old paper mixed with the faint aroma of coffee and the faintest hint of the cat's musk. As they pored over the evidence, the office seemed to hold its breath. The distant footsteps of patrolling clerks echoed like a ticking clock, a reminder that discovery could lead to disaster. Yet, in that moment, camaraderie and resolve blossomed amidst the absurdity of their surroundings. The mundane had become magical, the bureaucratic transformed into a battleground for the fate of countless worlds. Elliot glanced at Mr. Tiddles, who was perched serenely on a dusty shelf, eyes gleaming with inscrutable wisdom. The cat had chosen his moment to intervene, and Elliot knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but also possibility. "We have to act," Elliot said softly, "before they turn these portals into weapons of chaos." Mina nodded, her usual pragmatism tempered by a newfound determination. "Then let's make sure they don't get the chance." Outside, the bureau's fluorescent lights continued their indifferent flicker, and the endless hum of paperwork churned on. But within the shadows, A secret alliance was forming, one that would challenge the very fabric of order and chaos. Guided by a cat with a penchant for mischief and a young intern with a wild idea. And somewhere, in the depths of the filing cabinets, the lost socks waited, their mysteries far from exhausted. The adventure was just beginning. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead was a steady drone in the otherwise silent archive room. Ms. Prudence. Spindle sat alone at a narrow metal table, her sharp suit a stark contrast against the faded beige filing cabinets that towered around her like silent sentinels. The flickering lights cast restless shadows over her face, revealing a rare crack in the armor of her usual disapproving glare, a flicker of worry, of something more vulnerable. Before her lay a stack of reports, yellowed and dog-eared, each detailing the chaotic events of a portal incident that had happened years ago, before most of the current clerks had even started their internships. The file was marked with bureaucratic efficiency. Incident number 47, uncontrolled portal breach Spindle, P. Her own initials, a reminder of a day she would rather forget but could never quite erase. The room seemed to close in, the weight of past mistakes pressing down like the dense, dusty air around her. She traced a finger over the faded photographs clipped to the top of the file, images of swirling sock portals, flickering with otherworldly colors, and the panicked faces of clerks fleeing the scene. At the center of it all was a younger version of herself, eyes wide with a mixture of determination and fear. The memory unfolded like a film reel, transporting her back to a time when the bureau was smaller, less organized, and infinitely more chaotic. The office had been bustling with a nervous energy, a stark contrast to the cold order she now enforced. That day had started like any other, with a mountain of mismatched socks to sort and files to fill. But in a cluttered corner of the office, a peculiar sock had begun to twitch, first subtly, then with increasing urgency. Young Prudence, Spindle, fresh-faced and eager to prove herself, had been tasked with monitoring the sock portals. She had been warned repeatedly about the dangers of uncontrolled dimensions, but nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. The sock pulsed, then erupted into a swirling portal, sucking in papers, staplers, and even a startled clerk's hat, before stabilizing into a shimmering gateway to an unknown dimension. The office descended into chaos. Clerks shouted instructions, filing cabinets rattled as if alive, and the air filled with an electric charge that made hairs stand on end. Prudence, heart pounding, tried desperately to follow protocol, a protocol that seemed woefully inadequate in the face of such absurdity. She barked orders, attempted to seal the portal, but her efforts were frantic and ineffective. Her failure was inevitable. The portal expanded beyond control, and it was only through the combined efforts of several senior clerks that the breach was eventually contained. But not before significant disruption and damage to the office. The aftermath was a mess: lost files, confused clerks, and a bureau chastened by the reminder that their orderly world was fragile indeed. In the days that followed, Prudence found herself at the center of a storm. Her superiors were unforgiving, their reprimands sharp and unyielding. This kind of negligence could have destroyed the entire bureau, one had said, his voice cold as the winter wind outside the office windows. The sting of humiliation burned deep, but it was tempered by a burgeoning resolve. She would never let such chaos happen again. That incident, forever etched in her memory and the bureau's records, became the crucible that forged the Ms. Spindle, known today, a woman who wielded rules like armor, who trusted order above all else, and who viewed any hint of disorder, especially the unpredictable sock portals, as a threat that must be suppressed at all costs. Back in the present, Ms. Spindle folded the file with meticulous care, her hands steady despite the tumult of emotions beneath her composed exterior. She glanced toward the window, where rain traced lazy rivers down the glass, distorting the view of the endless rows of filing cabinets beyond. For a moment, the harsh lines of her face softened, revealing a flicker of something almost like regret. The fear of chaos was not born of mere bureaucracy, but from a deeply personal failure, one that had shaped her entire career and worldview. It was this fear that fueled her opposition to Elliot, whose reckless curiosity threatened to unravel the delicate balance she fought so hard to maintain. Yet, beneath the surface, a question gnawed at her. Was order truly worth sacrificing the magic, the wonder that those lost socks represented? Could there be a way to embrace the chaos without letting it consume everything? As the rain pattered softly against the windowpane, Ms. Spindle's gaze hardened once more. The answers were not hers to give, at least, not yet. For now, she would continue her vigilant watch over the bureau, guarding its secrets and enforcing its rules, even as the world around her shifted in ways she could barely comprehend. The past was a heavy burden, but it was also a guide, and Prudence Spindle was nothing if not a creature of rules and resolve, bound to protect the fragile order of the bureau, no matter what the cost. Outside, a lone sock twitched faintly in its drawer, a subtle reminder that the story was far from over, and that the boundary between order and chaos was thinner than anyone dared admit. The game was changing, and Ms. Spindle would have to decide where she truly stood before the next move was made. The corridors of the Bureau of Lost Socks had a way of swallowing sound and light, turning even the most mundane footsteps into a cautious whisper. Tonight, the usual hum of indifferent clerks and the rustle of paperwork seemed to dim, replaced by an undercurrent of something far more sinister: conspiracy. Elliot, heart thundering against his ribs like a frantic metronome, pressed himself against the cold, peeling wall of a rarely used hallway. His ink-stained fingers gripped a hastily folded note directions to a secret meeting he had overheard from the ever-unpredictable Mr. Tiddles, the office cat who had proven an unlikely informant. The bureau was a place where lost socks were collected, catalogued, and, ostensibly, forgotten, but Elliot had learned that beneath the layers of endless filing cabinets and obtuse regulations, there pulsed a bizarre and potent secret. Socks were not mere fabric casualties of laundry day. They were doorways to other dimensions, gateways to realms as whimsical and strange as the office itself. However, tonight was not about discovery or wonder. It was about survival and subterfuge. Elliot adjusted the collar of his ill-fitting jacket, pulling it tighter as he navigated the maze-like passages. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast unnatural shadows, stretching and warping the familiar shapes of desks and filing cabinets into monstrous silhouettes. Somewhere ahead, muffled voices wove through the air like smoke, promising answers and danger. He reached the door, marked only by a small brass plaque etched with an inconspicuous senior clerk's conference room. A faint glow seeped from beneath, accompanied by the low, urgent murmur of voices. Elliot's breath caught. Beyond this door, the Bureau's true power brokers were gathered, plotting to wrest control from the tangled bureaucracy and harness the portals for their own ends. Drawing a deep breath, Elliot slipped inside as the door creaked open just enough for him to slip through unnoticed. The room was dimly lit, the fluorescent buzz replaced by the softer, more sinister glow of a peculiar sock sealed in a glass case at the center of a large oval table. Around it sat a semicircle of sharp-suited figures, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and dread. At the head, Ms. Prudence Spindle presided, clipboard in hand, her gaze sharp enough to slice through the thickening tension. "The portals," Ms. Spindle said, her voice clipped and precise, "are not toys for idle curiosity. They are the very fabric that maintains or threatens the order we have painstakingly built. If left unchecked, they will unravel everything." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. But Elliot caught the glint in Summer's ambition. Hunger for power cloaked in the language of duty. They spoke of weaponizing the portals, of using the lost socks as instruments of control across alternate realities. The absurdity of wielding cosmic chaos as a bureaucratic tool was not lost on Elliot, and yet the danger was all too real. Crouching behind a towering filing cabinet, Elliot struggled to steady his racing pulse as he jotted down notes with a stolen pen. The stale scent of old paper and leather filled his nostrils, mingling with the metallic tints of anxiety. His mind raced, cataloguing every detail, every name, every plan. Here, in this room thick with whispered conspiracies, the fate of countless dimensions was being decided by those who saw magic only as a problem to be managed. As the meeting drew to a close, the clerks gathered their files with a flurry of paper and whispered threats. Ms. Spindle's final words echoed in the chamber, a chilling reminder of the stakes. Order must be preserved at all costs. Elliot slipped away into the shadowed corridors, clutching the stolen intelligence like a lifeline. The silence that greeted him was oppressive, yet strangely comforting. He was no longer just an intern lost in the monotony of paperwork. He was a player in a cosmic game, armed with knowledge and a growing resolve to protect the whimsical truth from being crushed beneath the weight of bureaucracy. Back at his cluttered desk, Elliot spread out the notes, the glow of the peculiar sock on his desk casting playful shadows across the scattered papers. The battle lines were drawn, and the absurd clash between cosmic wonder and bureaucratic control was entering a new, dangerous phase. But Elliot was ready. With Harold's wisdom, Mina's pragmatism, and an irrepressible sense of humor, he would navigate the madness, one lost sock at a time. Yet, as he stared at the glowing sock, a question simmered beneath the surface. How could one intern hope to outwit a legion of senior clerks sworn to uphold order when the very fabric of reality was at stake? The answer, Elliot suspected, lay not in rules or regulations, but in embracing the delightful, chaotic absurdity of it all. And so, with a wry smile and mismatched socks peeking from beneath his sleeves, Elliot prepared to step back into the labyrinth, ready to turn the tide in the most bureaucratic battle the multiverse had ever seen. Elliot stared at the peculiar sock lying on the cluttered desk before him, its fabric swirling with faint iridescent hues that seemed to pulse softly in the dim light of the alcove. The hum of the fluorescent bulbs overhead was almost drowned out by his own quickening heartbeat. This was it, the culmination of Daysnow, weeks of whispered theories, furtive experiments, and stolen moments away from the drudgery of filing endless paperwork. "You ready?" Harold's voice broke through Elliot's reverie, his wild grey hair bouncing as he leaned over a patchwork of bizarre devices assembled haphazardly on the desk. "This one's unlike any other. If it behaves as I think, well, we might just blow the roof off the entire bureau." Elliot swallowed hard, adjusting his mismatched socks beneath the desk, a small, ironic comfort amid the mounting tension. "I'm ready. Let's see what secrets you're hiding." With a careful, almost reverent touch, Elliot pressed the sock against an odd contraption that resembled a cross between a filing cabinet handle and a Geiger counter. The air shimmered immediately, colors bleeding into one another like oil on water. A portal flickered open, a swirling vortex of whimsy and unknown possibility. At first, the portal pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, filling the alcove with a soft, otherworldly glow. Elliot reached out a tentative hand, fingers trembling. The fabric of reality seemed thin here, and the faint scent of lavender and old books wafted through the air. It was beautiful, mesmerizing. But then, without warning, the portal shuddered violently. The iridescent glow intensified, casting strange shadows that writhed across the walls. Filing cabinets rattled as if caught in a low earthquake, and loose papers lifted, swirling in eddies like autumn leaves caught in a sudden gust. Elliot shut it down, Harold shouted, his voice cracking with a mix of awe and panic. He scrambled to the console, fingers flying over buttons and dials, but the portal seemed to have a mind of its own. Mina appeared at the entrance to the alcove, clutching her ever-present coffee mug like a talisman. Her eyes widened as she took in the chaos, the flickering lights, the floating paperwork, the faint hum growing louder, more urgent. "This is a mess," she muttered, eyebrows knitting together. "We're going to get reprimanded, for sure. Or worse." Elliot's mind raced. He had wanted to understand the true nature of these sock portals, but this was beyond anything he imagined. The portal's instability was causing ripples, not just in their immediate surroundings, but seemingly in multiple dimensions. Through the glowing chaos, he caught glimpses. A corridor lined with candy-striped trees, a vast library floating on clouds, a carnival where laughter echoed endlessly. And then came the sounds, unearthly echoes, whispers of voices not quite human, the distant clang of bells from some unknown world. The office cat, Mr. Tiddles, appeared from nowhere, tail flicking lazily as he weaved through the disarray. He seemed strangely unfazed, almost amused, as if he understood the absurdity better than any of them. "Focus," Harold barked, shoving aside a stack of unruly papers. "We need to stabilize the portal before it tears open something worse." Elliot nodded, desperation sharpening his wit. He darted to a filing cabinet, yanking open drawers to grab folders filled with hastily scribbled notes and half-forgotten experiments. Frantically, they worked together, Harold tinkering with the devices, Mina organizing the chaotic paperwork, Elliot attempting to communicate with the portal through the sock itself, murmuring soothing nonsense as if coaxing a temperamental cat. Suddenly, the portal convulsed again, and the entire alcove seemed to tilt. The hum escalated into a cacophony of discordant tones, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated. Elliot's heart leaped into his throat. If this kept up, the bureau itself might be torn apart. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the portal stilled. The iridescent glow dimmed to a soft pulse, the air settled, and the office returned to its usual drab lighting. Papers drifted gently back onto desks, filing cabinets steadied, and the hum faded into a distant murmur. Before anyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the sharp clack of heels echoed down the corridor. Ms. Prudence Spindle appeared, clipboard in hand, her glare slicing through the aftermath like a sharpened blade. "What in the name of protocol is going on here?" she demanded, voice razor-edged. "This chaos is unacceptable." Elliot swallowed, guilt and defiance warring within him. It was an experiment, Ms. Spindle, a necessary risk to understand the portals better. "Necessary," she hissed, stepping into the alcove, eyes scanning the scattered papers and flickering lights with disgust. "You are jeopardizing the Bureau's order and safety. I will be reporting this incident immediately." Harold stepped forward, wild hair ruffling as he spoke with unexpected calm. "Order and chaos are two sides of the same coin, Prudence. You can't have one without the other. This incident, while messy, has revealed the fragility of the balance we maintain." Ms. Spindle's eyes narrowed. Balance is maintained through control, not reckless curiosity. Before the argument could escalate, Mr. Tiddles leaped onto the desk, scattering papers anew and drawing a rare, amused smirk from Elliot. The absurdity of the moment was not lost on anyone. As the tension hung thick in the air, Elliot realized that this incident was more than a simple mishap. It was a turning point, a sock too far into the unknown, exposing the Bureau's precarious hold on the multiverse and setting the stage for the battles and revelations yet to come. And as the portal's soft glow pulsed faintly once more, Elliot knew there was no turning back. The Bureau of Lost Socks was about to change forever. The aftermath of the portal incident stretched across the following days like a slow-moving storm. The normally staid corridors buzzed with whispered rumors and furtive glances. Elliot found himself at the center, a reluctant figurehead of chaos wrapped in mismatched socks. Ms. Spindle's presence was more oppressive than ever. Clipboard clutched tightly, she prowled the office, enforcing stricter regulations and issuing terse warnings. No more experiments, she declared in a meeting that felt more like a tribunal. We must preserve order. But Elliot knew better. The incident had opened something deeper, a crack in the bureaucratic facade that hid a universe of possibilities. With Harold and Mina at his side, he began piecing together the threads of what the sock portals truly represented. Gateways not just to whimsical realms, but also to power struggles that could ripple across realities. One afternoon, while sifting through the still disorganized paperwork, Elliot caught sight of Mr. Tiddles sitting serenely atop a filing cabinet, tail twitching thoughtfully. The cat's inscrutable gaze seemed to say, "This is only the beginning." Elliot smiled wryly and adjusted his mismatched socks. "Then let's make sure we're ready." The Bureau of Lost Socks, with all its absurdity and endless paperwork, was alive with new meaning. And somewhere, deep within the labyrinth of filing cabinets and forgotten corners, the peculiar sock pulsed softly, waiting for the next adventure.